My stepdaughter said with contempt, "Get out of the house, Norman. 1 hour. That's all you have." My wife stood behind her silent, unable to look me in the eye. They thought they'd already won. They had no idea I'd been quietly building their destruction. Yesterday, everything changed. Hello everyone, welcome to our story. Before we begin, I'd love it if you could like this video and subscribe to the channel. It helps us keep sharing meaningful stories like this one. Drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. I always enjoy connecting with you. Please note, this story includes some fictional elements added for entertainment and educational purposes. Any resemblance to real names or settings is purely coincidental, but the lessons and message I'm sharing may offer value to your life. The morning started like any other, until it didn't. I was folding my shirts when I heard the footsteps. 2 sets, one sharp and deliberate, the other hesitant, dragging slightly on the hardwood floor. I didn't need to turn around to know who they were. Diana walked in first. She always did. Her heels clicked against the floor like a countdown timer. Behind her, Rachel lingered near the doorway, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the carpet. My daughter, the girl I once carried on my shoulders. Now she couldn't even look at me. Diana stopped 3 feet away from me, close enough to make her point, far enough to keep her distance. "Get out, Norman. 1 hour, that's all you have." Her words landed like a slap. Cold. Final. No hesitation. I placed the shirt down, slowly smoothing the fabric with my fingers. My hands didn't shake. Not yet. I turned to face her, keeping my expression neutral. 71 years on this earth had taught me one thing: never let them see you rattled. 1 hour, I repeated, my voice calm. "That's generous of you." Diana's lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. It was the expression of someone who believed they'd already won. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be," she said, her tone dripping with false sympathy. "We both know you can't take care of yourself anymore." Rachel shifted behind her. I caught the movement in my peripheral vision. Her hands were trembling, just slightly, but she said nothing. I looked past Diana straight at my daughter. "Shakil," I said quietly. "Is this what you want?" For a second, just a fraction of a second, her eyes met mine. I saw something flicker there. Guilt, maybe. Regret. But it vanished as quickly as it came. She dropped her gaze again and said nothing. Diana stepped to the side, blocking my view. "Rachel agrees with me," she said smoothly. "You've been getting worse, Norman. Forgetting things. Wandering around at night. You're a danger to yourself." A danger to myself. That was rich. I'd been a mechanical engineer for 40 years. I'd designed systems that powered factories, bridges, entire city blocks. I'd rebuilt engines with my bare hands. And now, according to this woman, I couldn't be trusted to fold my own laundry. "Where do you expect me to go?" I asked. Diana shrugged, as if she'd already considered this and dismissed it. "Well, that's not my problem," she said. "But if you don't leave willingly, I'll call the authorities. You don't want that, do you?" I held her gaze for a long moment. She thought she had me cornered. She thought I was just an old man, confused and helpless. That's what she wanted me to be. I turned back to the suitcase on the bed. "I understand," I said quietly. Diana exhaled, satisfied. She thought I was giving up. I could hear it in the way her posture relaxed, the way her voice softened just a fraction. "Good," she said. 1 hour, Norman. Don't make us wait." She turned and walked out, heels clicking again, like a judge's gavel. Rachel hesitated for a moment, then followed. The door closed behind them with a soft click. I stood there in the silence, staring at the half-packed suitcase. 1 hour. I thought about the last time I'd packed a suitcase. It was 32 years ago. My wife, Margaret, had just given birth to Rachel. We were moving out of our tiny apartment into this house, this very house, 2847 Maple Drive. I'd carried Margaret over the threshold, laughing with baby Rachel bundled in a blanket in her arms. Margaret had looked up at me exhausted, but smiling, and said, "Promise me, Norman. Promise me you'll always protect our little girl." I'd promised. I remembered Rachel's first steps in this house, her first word, her first day of school. I remembered teaching her how to ride a bike in the driveway, how to change a tire, how to balance a checkbook. I remembered her at 17 crying in this very room because some boy had broken her heart. I'd sat on the edge of her bed and told her, "You're stronger than you know, sweetheart. Don't ever let anyone make you forget that." Where had that girl gone? I looked at the doorway where she'd stood just moments ago. The woman who couldn't even meet my eyes. The woman who stood by while Diana dismantled everything. Rachel was gone. The daughter I knew was gone. I turned back to the suitcase and resumed folding. My hands were steady now. My mind was clear. Diana thought she'd won. She thought 1 hour was all it would take to erase me from this house, from my own life. She had no idea. I paused, holding a pair of socks in my hands, and allowed myself a small smile. The kind of smile that didn't reach my eyes. The kind that would have meant nothing to Diana or Rachel if they'd seen it. Because while they'd been plotting for months planning how to take everything from me, I'd spent yesterday changing everything. I reached into the drawer and pulled out a small envelope. Inside was a single business card. Sarah Thornton, attorney at law, elder rights specialist. I slipped it into my pocket. Diana wanted 1 hour. Fine. She could have it. But what she didn't know, what neither of them knew, was that the clock wasn't ticking for me anymore. It was ticking for them. I zipped up the suitcase, grabbed my coat, and walked toward the door. I didn't look back. Not at the room, not at the house, not at the life they thought they were taking from me. Because this wasn't the end. This was just the beginning. Let me tell you how I ended up here, a 71-year-old man being thrown out of his own home by a woman I thought I loved, and her daughter who I'd welcomed as family. It didn't happen overnight. It never does. Manipulation is slow, patient. It waits until you're vulnerable and then it strikes. For me, that vulnerability began 10 years ago. Margaret died in the spring of 2014. Cancer. It started in her lungs and spread before we even knew what was happening. 6 months from diagnosis to the end. 6 months of watching the woman I'd loved for 40 years fade away one breath at a time. I remember the last day. She was in the hospital bed, hooked up to machines that beeped and hummed. Her hand was cold when I held it, but she smiled at me anyway, the same smile she'd given me on our wedding day. "Find happiness again, Norman," she whispered. "Don't spend the rest of your life alone. Promise me." I promised. I would have promised her anything. She passed away that night. After Margaret was gone, the house felt too big, too quiet. We'd never had children. It was just the two of us for 40 years, and now it was just me. Friends would call. Neighbors would check in. But eventually the casseroles stopped coming. The phone calls became less frequent. People moved on with their lives. I tried to fill the silence. I volunteered at the community center, fixed things around the house, took long walks. But at the end of every day, I'd come home to an empty house and realize I had no one to talk to. I was lonely, deeply, achingly lonely. That's when Diana walked into my life. It was the summer of 2021, 7 years after Margaret passed. I'd gone to a charity fundraiser at the Fairview Heights Community Hall. My neighbor Frank insisted I attend. Diana was working the event, coordinating donations, greeting guests. She was stunning, confident, warm. When she approached me with a glass of wine and a smile, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. "You look like you could use some company," she said. "I'm Diana Foster." "Oh, Norman Sullivan," I replied. We talked for over an hour. She told me she was a real estate agent, had been divorced for 8 years, had a daughter named Rachel who was a nurse. She asked about my life, my work as an engineer, my marriage. She listened, really listened. For the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. After that night, Diana started showing up. Coffee on Saturdays, dinner on Wednesdays, walks through the park on Sundays. She'd laugh at my stories. She'd rest her hand on my arm when we talked. She made me feel alive again. 6 months later, I proposed. Looking back now, I know it was too fast. I know I should have asked more questions. But I was caught up in the feeling of being wanted, of not being alone anymore. We married in a small ceremony at the courthouse. Frank stood as my witness. Diana's daughter Rachel came, though she seemed distracted, checking her phone throughout the vows. I brushed it off. Diana moved into the house on Maple Drive. My house. The house Margaret and I had bought together in 1982. At first, everything seemed perfect. Diana redecorated, brought warmth back into the rooms. She cooked elaborate dinners. She'd sit with me on the porch in the evenings, talking about the future. But then slowly things started to change. About 3 months after the wedding, Diana suggested she take over the household finances. "You've worked hard your whole life, Norman," she said. "Let me handle the bills, the accounts. You deserve to relax." It seemed reasonable. I was retired. She was organized. I signed over access to my checking account, my savings, my pension deposits. Around the same time, Rachel started coming around more often. Diana said Rachel was going through a rough patch, had lost her job at the clinic, was struggling with money. Could she stay with us, bring her 2 kids, Dylan and Ashley? "Of course," I said. "There's plenty of room." I thought I was helping. I thought I was being a good husband, a good stepfather figure. Rachel moved into the upstairs bedrooms with the kids. Diana said it was temporary, just until Rachel got back on her feet. But weeks turned into months, and I started noticing things. Whispered conversations between Diana and Rachel that would stop the moment I entered the room. Documents spread across the kitchen table that Diana would quickly gather up when I walked in. Phone calls Diana would take outside, pacing in the driveway with her back turned. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I was just adjusting to having people in the house again. But then, about 1.5 years after we got married, I came home early from a doctor's appointment. I walked into the house quietly. I heard Diana's voice coming from the bedroom. The door was cracked open. I stopped in the hallway. Don't worry," she was saying into the phone. Her voice was low, conspiratorial. "The house will be ours soon enough. Old men don't live forever." I froze. My hand hovered near the doorknob, but I didn't push it open. I just stood there, my heart pounding, listening to my wife talk about me like I was already dead. Like I was an inconvenience, an obstacle. I backed away, slowly, moving down the hallway as quietly as I'd come. I didn't confront her. I didn't say a word. Instead, I convinced myself I'd misunderstood, that she was talking about someone else. A client, maybe. An elderly relative. I was in denial. That was the first moment I knew something was wrong. But I didn't want to believe it. I told myself I'd misheard, that she didn't mean it the way it sounded. I was wrong, and my denial almost cost me everything. The signs started small. So small I almost missed them, almost. It all began in July, 3 months before they tried to throw me out. If I'd known then what those tiny details would lead to, I would have acted sooner. But hindsight is a cruel teacher. After I overheard Diana on that phone call talking about how old men don't live forever, I told myself I was being paranoid. I convinced myself she'd been talking about someone else, a client, a relative, anyone but me. But then the small things started adding up. The first sign came on a Tuesday morning in mid-July. I walked out to the mailbox like I did every day, coffee in hand, enjoying the cool morning air. Diana was already there, keys in her hand, pulling envelopes from the box. "Morning," I said, approaching her. She startled slightly, clutching the mail to her chest. "Oh, Norman," she said, recovering with a smile. "I was just grabbing this for you. You go rest. I'll bring it inside." "I can get my own mail," I said, reaching for it. She pulled back just a fraction. "I know you can, honey, but let me help. You've worked hard enough in your life." Her tone was sweet, caring. But something about the way she held that mail protective and tight felt wrong. I let it go. It seemed like such a small thing. But after that day, Diana was always the one to get the mail. Every single day. And I started noticing that the pile she brought inside seemed thinner than it should be. In August, I needed to check a medical bill. I'd had a routine checkup the month before, and I wanted to make sure my insurance had processed it correctly. I looked through the stack of mail on the kitchen counter. Nothing. "Diana," I called out. "Have you seen my doctor's bill, the one from last month?" She walked into the kitchen, drying her hands on a towel. "Oh, I already paid that, sweetheart," she said casually. "Don't worry about it." I frowned. "I don't remember writing a check." She laughed softly, the kind of laugh you'd give a confused child. Norman the First handled it online. You don't need to worry about these things anymore. That's why I'm here." I wanted to argue, but she was already walking away, humming to herself. I stood there in the kitchen, staring at the empty counter, and a small voice in the back of my mind whispered, "Something isn't right." But I ignored it. Then, in early September, a bank statement arrived. It must have slipped through Diana's collection routine because it was sitting in the mailbox when I went out one afternoon. I opened it. There, halfway down the page, was a charge I didn't recognize. $1,350. From a credit card I didn't remember opening. I stared at the number, my heart sinking. When Diana came home that evening, I was waiting at the kitchen table, the statement in front of me. "Diana," I said, keeping my voice calm. "Can you explain this?" She glanced at the paper, then at me, her expression perfectly composed. "That's the credit card you opened last year, Norman," she said smoothly. "Remember you said you wanted a backup card for emergencies? I didn't remember. I didn't remember opening a card. I didn't remember signing anything." "Are you sure?" I asked. Her eyes softened, and she reached across the table, placing her hand over mine. "Honey," she said gently, "you've been forgetting a lot lately. Little things. It's okay. It happens. But yes, you opened that card. I was with you." I pulled my hand back. "I don't remember," I said quietly. She sighed, standing up. "That's exactly what I'm talking about, Norman. You're forgetting more and more. Maybe we should get you checked out." She left the room, and I sat there alone, the statement still in my hands. Did I really forget, was my memory going? The doubt crept in like poison. That same week, I started noticing Diana and Rachel whispering more often. They'd be in the kitchen, heads close together, voices low. The moment I walked in, they'd stop. Rachel would avoid my eyes. Diana would smile and ask if I needed anything. One evening, Dylan ran up to me in the living room, arms outstretched. "Grandpa," he shouted, wrapping his small arms around my leg. I smiled, reaching down to ruffle his hair. "Hey, buddy. How was school?" Before he could answer, Diana's voice cut through the room. "Dylan, don't bother Grandpa. He needs his quiet time." The boy froze, looking up at me with wide, uncertain eyes. "It's okay," I said softly. "He's not bothering me." But Diana was already pulling him away, her grip firm on his shoulder. "Come on, Dylan, let's go upstairs." The boy looked back at me as she led him away, and something in his expression broke my heart. Later that week, I tried talking to Rachel. I found her in the hallway, scrolling through her phone. "Rachel," I said, "can we talk?" She glanced up, her face unreadable. "About what? Is everything okay? You and your mother seem tense." Her expression hardened. "Why wouldn't everything be okay?" "I don't know," I said carefully. "I just feel like something's going on." She slipped her phone into her pocket, crossing her arms. "Nothing's going on, Norman. Maybe you're just imagining things." She walked past me, her shoulder brushing mine, and disappeared into her room. That night I woke to the sound of voices, faint, coming from downstairs. I glanced at the clock. 2 a.m. I got out of bed, moving quietly down the hallway. The sound was coming from the garage. I descended the stairs slowly, my hand on the railing. The garage door was closed, but I could hear movement. A drill. Low voices. then silence. I reached for the doorknob. Locked. I stood there in the dark, staring at the door, my pulse quickening. The next morning, I tried to open the garage again. Still locked. Diana appeared behind me, making me jump. "Oh, we're just reorganizing some things in there," she said lightly. "I'll show you when we're done." But she never did. That garage, that locked door. It haunted me for weeks, because behind it, they were building something. Something that required my name, my signature, and my entire life. And I had no idea how close I was to losing everything. It happened on a Tuesday morning. The morning I well, let's just say it was the closest I'd ever come to never waking up again. 5 weeks before they demanded I leave, something happened that changed everything. Up until that point, I'd been suspicious, cautious, watching Diana and Rachel with careful eyes, noting the small inconsistencies, the locked garage, the whispered conversations. But that morning suspicion turned into certainty. It started like any other day. I woke at 6:30, made coffee, sat at the kitchen table with the newspaper. The house was quiet. Diana was still asleep upstairs. Rachel and the kids hadn't come down yet. I reached for my pill organizer on the counter. Blood pressure medication. One small white tablet, same as every morning for the past 5 years. Before I could open the container, Diana appeared in the doorway. She was already dressed, hair pulled back, makeup perfect. Too perfect for 6:45 in the morning. "Let me help you with that, honey," she said, crossing the kitchen. "I can manage," I said. But she was already reaching for the pill bottle in the cabinet, not the organizer. She shook 3 pills into her palm and held them out to me with a glass of water. I stared at her hand. 3 pills. "That seems like a lot," I said slowly. She smiled, the kind of smile that was supposed to be reassuring, but somehow wasn't. "Dr. Peterson adjusted your dosage last week. Remember, you were there. He said you needed to increase it." I didn't remember. I didn't remember any appointment last week. But then again, I'd been forgetting things lately. Or at least Diana kept telling me I had. "Are you sure?" I asked. Her smile tightened just a fraction. "Norman, I was sitting right next to you when he said it. You really don't remember." There it was again, that tone, the one that made me feel like I was losing my mind. I looked at the pills in her hand. 3 small white tablets. Maybe she was right. Maybe I did forget. I took the pills and swallowed them. Diana watched me, her eyes sharp, then turned and walked out of the kitchen without another word. I sat there staring at my coffee, a strange unease settling in my chest. 30 minutes later, the room started to tilt. I stood up from the table, gripping the edge for balance. My vision blurred. My heartbeat slowed, each thump heavy and sluggish in my chest. Something was wrong. I took a step toward the hallway and felt my legs give out. The last thing I heard before everything went dark was Rachel's voice, high and panicked. "Dad, oh my God, Dad." Then nothing. I woke up to bright lights and the steady beep of machines. Hospital. My head felt thick, my mouth dry. I tried to sit up, but a hand pressed gently on my shoulder. "Easy, Mr. Sullivan," a voice said. "Dr. Peterson." I recognized him even through the fog. "What happened?" I croaked. Diana's face appeared above me, her expression the picture of concern. She reached for my hand, squeezing it. "You collapsed, Norman," she said softly. "You scared me so much." Dr. Peterson stepped closer, clipboard in hand. "Mr. Sullivan, you took an overdose of your blood pressure medication. Your levels dropped dangerously low. You're lucky your daughter-in-law found you when she did." "Overdose." I blinked, trying to process the words. "I only took what Diana gave me," I said, my voice weak. Dr. Peterson glanced at Diana, then back at me. His expression shifted just slightly. Concerned, pitying. "Oh, Mr. Sullivan," he said gently. "Have you been experiencing any memory issues lately? Confusion, forgetting things?" I hesitated. Diana leaned forward, her voice trembling. "Doctor, he's been forgetting a lot. Conversations, appointments. I've been so worried." Dr. Peterson nodded slowly, making a note on his chart. "I'm going to recommend a cognitive assessment. just to be safe. Cognitive assessment. They thought I was losing my mind. Diana squeezed my hand again, her thumb rubbing small circles on my skin. To anyone else, it would have looked like comfort. But I felt the pressure, the control. I was released from the hospital that evening with instructions to rest and a referral for further evaluation. When we got home, Diana helped me upstairs to bed, her touch gentle, her voice soothing. She was playing the role of the devoted wife perfectly. "Get some sleep, honey," she said, kissing my forehead. "I'll check on you in a bit." She closed the door softly behind her. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. After a few minutes, I reached for the pill bottle on the nightstand, my blood pressure medication. I opened it and poured the contents into my hand. I counted them. Then I counted them again. There should have been 22 pills left. I'd refilled the prescription 10 days ago, and I took one every morning. There were 19, 3 pills missing, the same 3 Diana had given me this morning. She hadn't given me an increased dosage. She'd given me a deliberate overdose. My hands started to shake. She tried to harm me, not to end things, not yet, but to break me, to make me weak, to make everyone believe I was losing my mind, and it was working. I lay back against the pillows, my heart pounding, cold sweat on my forehead. I couldn't tell anyone. Who would believe me? Dr. Peterson already thought I was confused. Diana had everyone convinced I was declining. I closed my eyes, forcing myself to breathe slowly. That night, I pretended to sleep. Around 10 o'clock, I heard footsteps in the hallway. Voices, low and urgent. I kept my eyes closed, my breathing even. "Are you sure he'll be okay?" Rachel's voice, shaking, guilty. "He's fine." Diana, cold, unbothered. "We just needed the doctor to see him confused. Now we have medical documentation." A pause. "What if he figures it out?" Rachel asked. Diana's laugh was soft, almost amused. "He won't. Old men always trust their wives." Their footsteps faded down the hall. I lay there in the darkness, my heart hammering, my hands trembling. They had tried to harm me with medication. Not to end things, not yet, but to break me. To make the world think I was losing my mind. And the plan was working. If I didn't act soon, they would finish what they'd started. But I didn't know then that this was just the first attempt. There would be one more, and it would be worse. 3 days after they gave me that harmful medication, I found the practice papers. And I realized just how long they'd been planning this. 3 days after being released from the hospital, I was still weak. My body felt heavy, my mind sluggish. But beneath the exhaustion, something else was growing. Anger, determination. I wasn't going to sit back and let them destroy me. That afternoon, Diana left for a property showing. Rachel took Dylan and Ashley to soccer practice. The house was empty except for me. I'd been waiting for this moment. I walked slowly up the stairs, my hand gripping the railing. My knee still ached from the fall last year, but I pushed through it. When I reached the second floor, I stopped in front of Diana's office. She usually kept the door locked, but today, in her rush to leave, she'd forgotten. I turned the knob. It clicked open. The office was immaculate. Clean desk, organized shelves, everything in its place. Diana was meticulous. She always had been. I started with the desk drawers. The first 2 held nothing unusual. Pens, sticky notes, real estate brochures. But in the third drawer, beneath a stack of folders, I found something. A manila folder unmarked. I pulled it out and opened it. Inside were dozens of sheets of paper. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. Then my eyes focused and my blood went cold. My signature, written over and over and over again. Norman Sullivan, Norman Sullivan, Norman Sullivan. Each one slightly different. Some too slanted, some too rushed. But as I flipped through the pages, they got better, more refined, closer to my actual handwriting. They'd been practicing for months. My hands started to shake. I kept looking. Behind the signature sheets, I found documents. Real documents. forms for a power of attorney, cognitive assessment paperwork, and a copy of the deed to my house. 2847 Maple Drive. My house. The house Margaret and I had bought together. The house where we'd spent 40 years of our lives. They were planning to take it. I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures. Every page, every signature, every form. I had to have proof. When I finished, I carefully put everything back exactly as I'd found it. I couldn't let Diana know I'd been in here. I closed the drawer, stood up, and left the office, pulling the door shut behind me. My heart was pounding, my mind racing. But I wasn't done yet. I went downstairs to the living room. In the corner, tucked beneath a side table, was an old laptop. Rachel's. She'd left it behind when she moved in with us, said she'd gotten a new one for work. I pulled it out, dusted off the cover, and opened it. The login screen appeared. I stared at it for a moment, then typed in a guess. Dylan 2015. The year her son was born. The screen unlocked. I exhaled slowly. I was in. I opened the email application. Most of the recent messages were gone, deleted. But I knew how to recover deleted files. I'd been an engineer for 40 years. I understood systems. I navigated to the trash folder. There, buried among spam and old newsletters, I found what I was looking for. Emails between Rachel and Diana. I clicked on the first one. Dated 2 months ago. From Rachel to Diana, subject practice. The signature practice looks good. We're almost ready. I clicked on the next one. From Diana to Rachel, subject practice. Once we have the POA, we won't even need his real signature anymore. The house is as good as ours. I felt the world tilt. I kept scrolling. Another email. This one with an attachment. I opened it. A real estate contract. For 2,847 Maple Drive. Sale price $485,000. And at the bottom, a signature. Norman Sullivan. But I hadn't signed it. I zoomed in on the signature. It was good. Not perfect, but close. Close enough to fool a bank. Close enough to fool a title company. Close enough to steal everything I'd built. I kept reading. The next email was dated just 2 weeks ago. From Rachel to Diana, subject scared. Diana, I'm scared. What if he figures it out? From Diana to Rachel, subject re-scared. He won't, Rachel. He's too trusting. And after tomorrow's incident, he'll be too weak to fight back anyway. I stopped. Tomorrow's incident. I checked the date on the email again. 2 weeks ago. Tomorrow would have been the day after they sent that email. The day after. I scrolled further, looking for more context, but the rest of the emails had been permanently deleted. But I didn't need more. I understood. They'd already tried once with the medication. And they were planning something else. Something worse. Another incident. Another attempt to weaken me. To break me. And if I hadn't found this email, I wouldn't have known. I wouldn't have been prepared. I sat back staring at the laptop screen, my pulse pounding in my ears. They weren't just stealing my house. They were dismantling my entire life. Piece by piece. Signature by signature. Incident by incident. But now I knew. Now I had proof. I pulled out my phone again and took pictures of every email, every attachment, every piece of evidence. When I was done, I closed the laptop and slid it back under the table exactly where I'd found it. I stood up slowly, my legs unsteady, and walked to the window. Outside, the street was quiet. The sun was starting to set, casting long shadows across the driveway. Tomorrow's incident. They were planning something. Soon. Maybe even in the next few days. But this time I would be ready. This time I wouldn't be the victim. I would be the one watching. Waiting. Gathering every shred of evidence I needed to stop them. Because if I didn't act soon, they would finish what they'd started. And I would lose everything. They pushed me down the stairs the next morning. And this time they didn't care whether I recovered or not. The night before, after I found that email, after I saw the words, tomorrow's incident, I knew what I had to do. I waited until Diana and Rachel went to bed. Until the house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator downstairs and the occasional creak of old wood settling. Then I moved. I'd ordered a small hidden camera online 2 weeks earlier. It arrived in a plain box, no return address. I'd tucked it away in my closet, waiting for the right moment. This was the right moment. I took the camera out, checked the battery, and carried it into the upstairs hallway. My knee ached with every step, the old injury from last year's car accident flaring up, but I pushed through it. I positioned the camera on the top shelf of the hallway bookcase, angled toward the staircase. It was small enough to blend in with the books and picture frames. Unless you were looking for it, you'd never know it was there. I activated the motion sensor, checked the feed on my phone to make sure the angle was right, then went back to bed. My heart was pounding. My hands were shaking, but I was ready. The next morning I woke early. 6 o'clock. The house was still quiet. I got dressed, slowly wincing as I bent my knee. I made my way to the hallway, pausing at the top of the stairs. Below me, the living room was dim. Morning light filtered through the curtains, casting long shadows across the floor. I heard footsteps behind me. Diana. I didn't turn around. I kept my eyes on the stairs, my hand on the railing, and waited. Norman, she called out. Her voice was sweet, concerned. Wait, let me help you down. I felt her presence behind me. Close. Too close. Then without warning, her hands slammed into my shoulders. I didn't have time to react. I lost my balance, my feet slipping out from under me. The world tilted and I fell. I tumbled down 5, maybe 6 steps before my knee smashed into the railing. The impact was immediate and brutal. Pain exploded through my leg, sharp and blinding, like a knife digging into bone. I hit the landing hard, my body crumpling against the wall. For a moment, everything went white. Then I heard Diana's voice, high and panicked. An arm and oh my God. Rachel, call 911. Footsteps pounded down the hallway. Rachel appeared at the top of the stairs, her face pale, her eyes wide. Dad, she screamed. Dad, are you okay? I tried to push myself up, but my knee buckled. The pain was overwhelming. I collapsed back against the wall, gasping for breath. Rachel ran down the stairs, kneeling beside me. Her hands were shaking as she reached for my arm. Dad, don't move, she said, her voice trembling. Just stay still. I looked up at Diana. She was still standing at the top of the stairs, her hand over her mouth, her eyes wide with mock horror. But for just a second, just a fraction of a second, before Rachel looked up, I saw it. The coldness in her eyes, the calculation. Then she blinked, and it was gone, replaced by perfect concern. Is he okay? Diana called down, her voice shaking. Should I call an ambulance? Rachel looked up at her, then back at me. I don't know. Dad, can you stand? I gritted my teeth and tried again. My knee screamed in protest, but I managed to get to my feet, leaning heavily on Rachel's shoulder. I'm fine, I lied. Just slipped. Diana came down the stairs slowly, carefully, her hand on the railing. When she reached me, she placed her hand on my arm, her touch gentle. Norman, you scared me, she whispered. I looked at her, said nothing. Let's get him upstairs, Diana said to Rachel. We'll call Dr. Peterson. He can come check him out here. No need for an ambulance. No need for an ambulance. No need for hospital records. No need for official documentation. Of course, they helped me back upstairs, each step agony. By the time we reached my bedroom, I was drenched in sweat, my vision swimming. They lowered me onto the bed, and I lay there staring at the ceiling, trying to breathe through the pain. Dr. Peterson arrived an hour later. He examined my knee, pressing gently, asking me to move it. Every touch sent fresh waves of pain through my leg. A severe sprain, he said finally. Possibly a hairline fracture. You'll need to stay off it for at least 2 weeks. Complete bed rest. Diana nodded, her hand still resting on my arm. Of course, doctor. I'll take care of him. Dr. Peterson packed up his bag and left. Rachel walked him to the door. When they were gone, Diana turned to Rachel, and I saw them exchange a look. Rachel spoke first, her voice barely above a whisper. 2 weeks. That's perfect. Diana smiled, just slightly. Yes, it is. Then they left the room, closing the door softly behind them. I lay there in the silence, my knee throbbing, my entire body aching. But beneath the pain, there was something else. Satisfaction. Because the camera had caught everything. That night, when the house was dark and everyone was asleep, I pulled my laptop onto the bed. My hands were still shaking, but I managed to open the file from the camera. The video loaded. There I was, standing at the top of the stairs. And there was Diana walking up behind me. She paused, looked around, made sure no one was watching. Then she stepped forward, placed both hands on my shoulders, and shoved hard. The footage was clear, undeniable. An assault, or at the very least intentional harm causing serious injury. I saved the file, backed it up to the cloud. Then I closed the laptop and leaned back against the pillows. I had her, on video, a deliberate attack, evidence that couldn't be explained away. But I couldn't use it yet. Not until I had everything. Not until I knew every piece of their plan. So I lay there enduring the pain and waited. While they thought I'd fallen, I was building the case to bring them down. 2 weeks of bed rest. 2 weeks to gather every last shred of evidence. 2 weeks until I would be ready to strike back. On the 5th night of my recovery, I heard her whispering to someone. Someone who wasn't Rachel. Someone named Aaron. 5 nights confined to bed. 5 nights of Diana bringing me meals, adjusting my pillows, handing me pain medication with that perfect, concerned smile. 5 nights of pretending to be weak while I gathered evidence. Every evening she'd give me a sleeping pill. "To help you rest, honey," she'd say, placing it in my palm with a glass of water. I'd pretend to swallow it. But the moment she left the room, I'd spit it into a tissue and hide it under the mattress. I needed to stay awake. I needed to hear everything. That 5th night at 2:15 in the morning, I heard her footsteps in the hallway. I kept my eyes closed, my breathing slow and steady. The bedroom door creaked open. Diana stood in the doorway for a moment, watching me. I could feel her eyes on me, checking to make sure I was asleep. Then she closed the door and moved down the hallway. I waited 10 seconds. Then I opened my eyes. Her voice was faint, barely audible through the walls. I slid out of bed, wincing as my knee protested, and limped quietly to the door. I pressed my ear against the crack. "One, Aaron, I told you it's almost done." Diana's voice was low, urgent. A whisper, but I could hear every word. A man's voice responded, tinny and distant through the phone speaker. "You've been saying that for 2 months, Diana. I'm running out of patience. He's weak now," Diana said. "After the fall, he can barely walk. Once we get the POA signed, it's over. The house sells for at least $485,000. We split it 50-50, remember?" My hands clenched into fists. "What about the daughter?" Aaron's voice was sharp, demanding. "Can you trust her?" Diana laughed softly. "Rachel. She's desperate for money. She'll do whatever I say. Besides, she doesn't know about you. Say good. Keep it that way. The fewer people involved, the bigger our cut." "I love you," Diana said, her voice dropping to something softer, almost tender. There was a pause. Then Aaron's voice came back cold and flat. "I love your money, Diana. Everything else, we'll see." The line went dead. I stood there in the dark, my heart pounding, my jaw tight. Diana stood in the hallway for a moment longer. Then she walked back to her room and closed the door. I limped back to bed, my mind racing. Aaron Grant, a lover, a partner, a man I'd never even heard of, planning to take everything I'd built. The next morning, Diana left for a property showing. Rachel took the kids to school. The house was empty. I got out of bed slowly, every movement sending fresh pain through my knee, but I pushed through it. I made my way downstairs to the living room, gripping the railing with every step. In the corner beneath a stack of old magazines on the side table was Diana's old phone. She thought I didn't know about it. She thought she'd hidden it well enough. I pulled it out and powered it on. The lock screen appeared. I stared at it for a moment, then typed in a guess. Her birthday, June 10th, 1974. The phone unlocked. I opened the messaging app and scrolled through her contacts. Most were clients' colleagues, but one stood out. I clicked on it. Hundreds of messages, going back months. I scrolled through them, my stomach twisting with every line. Photos of them together at hotels. Messages mixing affection with cold calculation. From Aaron. Once he's out of the picture, we can finally be together. Mexico sounds nice. From Diana. He won't be around much longer, I promise. From Aaron. You've got guts, Diana. Most people wouldn't go this far. From Diana. Most people don't want it as badly as I do. I kept scrolling, my hands shaking. Then I found the conversation that made my blood run cold. From Aaron. What if he survives? What if the fall didn't work? From Diana. Then we try again. Third time's the charm, right? From Aaron. You're cold, Diana. I like that. I stared at the screen, the words blurring in front of me. Third time. They were planning a third attempt. The medication hadn't worked. The fall hadn't worked, so they'd try again. And this time they wouldn't settle for a broken knee. I took photos of every message, every picture, every piece of evidence. When I was done, I closed the phone and slid it back under the magazines exactly where I'd found it. I stood there in the living room, my hands trembling, not from fear, but from determination. Diana wasn't just stealing my house. She was planning to make sure I couldn't fight back. Ever. And she had an accomplice I'd never suspected. Aaron Grant. That name would become the final piece I needed to bring Diana down. Because now I knew the full picture. This wasn't just about money. This wasn't just about the house. This was about eliminating me completely. Diana had played the devoted wife. She'd convinced Rachel to betray me. She'd manipulated doctors' forged signatures and orchestrated 2 attempts to harm me. And through it all, she'd had a partner waiting in the shadows. A man who didn't love her. A man who loved money. A man who was willing to do whatever it took to get his share. I sat down slowly on the couch, my knee throbbing, my mind clear. They thought I was weak. They thought I was isolated. They thought I was one fall, one misstep, one accident away from being out of the picture for good. But they were wrong, because while they were planning their third attempt, I was building a case. Piece by piece. Evidence by evidence. And when the time came, I wouldn't just stop them. I would make sure they never got the chance to hurt anyone else again. I couldn't wait anymore. If they were planning a third attempt, I needed insurance. I needed evidence they couldn't deny, couldn't twist, couldn't escape. The day after I discovered Aaron, I took action. That morning, Diana left for work early. Rachel loaded Dylan and Ashley into the car and drove them to the park. The house was mine. I got out of bed, slowly wincing as my knee protested. It had been a week since the fall, and I could move a little better now, but every step still sent sharp pain through my leg. I didn't care. I had work to do. I limped downstairs to the front door and retrieved the small package that had arrived the day before. I'd ordered it online, paid with a prepaid card Diana didn't know about, and had it delivered to a neighbor's house. Frank had dropped it off for me that morning, with a knowing nod and no questions asked. Inside the box were 4 mini recording devices. Voice-activated, Bluetooth-enabled, cloud backup. Perfect. I started in the living room. The first device went inside the fake flower vase on the side table near the couch. Diana always sat there when she made phone calls. I tested the angle, made sure the microphone was unobstructed, then activated it. The tiny green light blinked once, then went dark. Connected. Next, the kitchen. I moved slowly, my knee aching with every step. The second device fit perfectly behind the cabinet just above the kitchen table. This was where Diana and Rachel had their whispered conversations, where they thought no one could hear them. Now I would hear everything. The third device was harder. I had to get into the garage. I stood at the garage door, my hand on the knob. It had been locked since the night I'd heard them drilling in there weeks ago. But today it was open. Diana must have forgotten to lock it. I stepped inside. The garage was cluttered. Boxes stacked against the walls, tools hanging on pegboards, and in the corner, a filing cabinet I'd never seen before. I opened it. Inside were documents, blank real estate contracts, copies of my identification, forged signatures on practice sheets. I took photos of everything, then placed the third device inside an old toolbox on the shelf. It blended in perfectly. They'd never notice. Finally, Diana's office. I climbed the stairs again, each step a test of endurance. When I reached her office, I paused in the doorway, listening. The house was still silent. I crossed the room and placed the fourth device behind the picture frame on her desk. The frame held a photo of her and Rachel at some charity event, both smiling, arms linked. A perfect lie. I activated the device, checked the connection on my phone, and backed out of the room. All 4 devices were live, all synced to the app on my phone, all set to record automatically and upload to the cloud. Now all I had to do was wait. That evening, Diana and Rachel came home. I was back in bed, my laptop opened, the recording app running silently in the background. Diana knocked softly on my door. "Norman, how are you feeling?" "Tired," I said, not looking up. I'll bring you dinner later," she said. Her voice was sweet, concerned, a perfect performance. She closed the door. I put in my earbuds and waited. Around 10 o'clock that night, the kitchen device picked up voices. I sat up in bed, heart pounding, and pressed play. Rachel's voice came through, first low and hesitant. "He seems weaker. Do you think he suspects anything?" Diana's voice was calm, cold. "He's too trusting. He always has been. That's why this has been so easy." A pause. "Sometimes I still feel guilty," Rachel said quietly. He's the only father figure I've had since you married him." Diana's laugh was sharp. "He's also sitting on $500,000 while you're drowning in debt." "Whose side are you on, Rachel?" Silence. "Once we get the POA," Diana continued, "he'll sign everything over. Then we move him into that facility, sell the house, and split the money." "What about Dylan and Ashley?" Rachel asked. Her voice shook slightly. "They'll adjust," Diana said dismissively. "Kids always do." I clenched my jaw, my hands gripping the edge of the laptop. The recording continued. "I already found a buyer for the house," Diana said. "Cash offer, $485,000. We can close in 60 days, assuming Norman cooperates." "And if he doesn't cooperate?" Rachel asked. There was a long pause. "Then we make sure he can't object," Diana said finally. "That nursing home doesn't allow visitors without family consent, and you're his only family, Rachel." Another pause, longer this time. You mean, lock him away?" Rachel's voice was barely a whisper. "I mean, protect our investment," Diana said coldly. I stopped the recording. My hands were shaking. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. They weren't just planning to steal my house. They were planning to silence me, to lock me away in some facility where I'd have no voice, no visitors, no way to fight back. They were planning to erase me. But what they didn't know was that every word they'd just spoken had been recorded, saved, backed up to the cloud. Every lie, every threat, every cold, calculated betrayal. I sat there in the darkness, staring at the laptop screen. The recording still paused. 4 devices, 4 locations, 4 sources of undeniable evidence. They thought they were so careful. They thought they were so smart. But they just confessed everything, and soon the whole world would hear it. I saved the file, backed it up again, and closed the laptop. My knee still ached. My body was still weak, but my resolve had never been stronger. They wanted to erase me. Instead, I was going to expose them. 5 days later, I could walk again. And finally, Rachel came to me, tears streaming, begging me to understand. 5 days after I installed the recording devices, my knee had healed enough for me to move around the house without wincing at every step. I was still careful, still slow, but I was mobile again. And I was ready. That afternoon, Diana left for a showing. Dylan and Ashley were at school. The house was quiet except for Rachel, who was upstairs in her room. I stood at the bottom of the stairs and called up. "Rachel, we need to talk now." There was a pause. Then I heard her door open. She appeared at the top of the stairs, her face uncertain. "Is everything okay?" she asked. I didn't answer. I just turned and walked into the living room. She followed. When she sat down on the couch, I pulled a folded piece of paper from my pocket and placed it on the coffee table between us. "Explain this," I said. She leaned forward, unfolding the paper. Her face went pale. It was the real estate contract. The one I'd found on her old laptop. The one with my forged signature. I don't know what this is," she stammered. "Don't lie to me, Rachel." I said, my voice cold. "I found it on your computer. Your email is attached to that document." She stared at the paper, her hands trembling. Then she looked up at me and her eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't want to do it. I swear I didn't." I waited. "Diana," she said, her voice breaking. "She forced me. She said if I didn't help her, she'd kick me and the kids out. I had nowhere to go, no money. I was desperate." "So you decided to steal from me instead?" I asked quietly. "No, I mean, yes, but..." "Diana said you'd be taken care of. She said the nursing home was really nice, and you'd be safe there." "You mean the place where I'd be locked away?" I interrupted. "The place where you'd control who I could see, who could visit me." She froze. "How do you..." I heard everything, Rachel," I said. "Every conversation, every plan. And I know you're not some innocent victim. You're a willing accomplice." Her tears stopped. She wiped her face with the back of her hand, and her expression changed. Hardened. "What are you going to do?" she asked, her voice flat now. "You can't prove anything." I stood up slowly, my knee aching but holding steady. "I don't need to prove anything to you," I said. "But I will prove it to the people who need to know." Her eyes widened. "You can't call the police. I'm like your daughter. Think about Dylan and Ashley." "I am thinking about them," I said, my voice shaking now. "I'm thinking about how their mother tried to steal their grandfather's house, how she practiced forging my signature, how she stood by and watched while Diana pushed me down the stairs." Rachel flinched. "I didn't..." "You were there, Rachel," I said. "You saw what she did, and you said nothing." She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. I stepped closer, looking down at her. "When I married your mother 3 years ago," I said slowly, "I promised I would treat you like my own daughter. I opened this house to you and your kids when you needed a place to stay. I gave you everything, my time, my money, my home. And you repay me by trying to take the one thing I have left." Rachel looked away. "You're not the daughter I treated like my own," I said. "You're a stranger." She stood up abruptly, her face flushed. "You don't understand. You don't know what it's like to be buried in debt, to have no way out." "So you chose to bury me instead?" I asked. She stopped. Her jaw tightened. "I did what I had to do," she said quietly. "No," I said. "You did what Diana told you to do, and now you'll have to live with that." For a moment we just stood there staring at each other. The silence was heavy, suffocating. Then Rachel turned and walked toward the stairs. "Where are you going?" I asked. She stopped but didn't turn around. I need to call Diana," she said. "Why? Because you're going to ruin everything," she said, her voice shaking. "And we need to figure out what to do about you." I felt something cold settle in my chest. "What to do about me?" I repeated. She didn't answer. She just walked up the stairs and disappeared into her room. I stood there alone in the living room, my heart pounding. She wasn't crying because she was sorry. She was crying because she was scared of getting caught. And now she was going to warn Diana. I sat back down on the couch, my hands shaking. I'd hoped somewhere deep down that maybe Rachel could still be saved. That maybe, just maybe, there was a part of her that still cared. A part that would choose to do the right thing. But there wasn't. She'd made her choice, and it wasn't me. I pulled out my phone and opened the recording app. The devices were still running. Still recording. If Rachel was calling Diana right now, I'd have every word. I waited. 10 minutes later, the app pinged. A new recording. Rachel's room. I put in my earbuds and pressed play. Rachel's voice came through shaky and urgent. Diana, he knows. He knows everything. Diana's voice calm and cold. How much does he know? The contract, the signatures, the nursing home plan, all of it. A pause. Did he say he's calling the police? Diana asked. He said he's going to prove it to people who need to know. I think he means the police. Another pause, longer this time. Then we move up the timeline, Diana said finally. Tomorrow. We do it tomorrow. Do what tomorrow? Rachel asked, her voice barely a whisper. Get him out of that house, Diana said. One way or another. The recording ended. I sat there staring at my phone, my blood running cold. Tomorrow. They were planning something. Something final. And I had less than 24 hours to stop them. That night, I finally got into the garage. And what I found there made everything else look like child's play. The night after I confronted Rachel, after I heard Diana say, tomorrow, I knew I couldn't wait any longer. I had to see what they'd been hiding in that garage since the beginning. I waited until 1:30 in the morning. The house was silent. Diana was asleep in her room. Rachel was upstairs with the kids. I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator downstairs, the occasional creak of the old house settling. I got out of bed slowly, my knee still aching but manageable. I'd been moving around more the past few days, building my strength back. Earlier that evening, I'd seen Diana leave her purse on the coffee table. Inside was a small key ring. One of the keys was labeled Garage in her neat handwriting. I'd slipped it off the ring while she was in the kitchen. Now I stood at the garage door, the key in my hand. I unlocked it, turned the knob, and stepped inside. The air was cool and smelled faintly of oil and dust. I pulled out my phone, turned on the flashlight, and swept the beam across the space. Boxes stacked against the walls, tools hanging on pegboards, and in the corner, a small filing cabinet, locked. I knelt down in front of it, wincing as my knee protested. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a flathead screwdriver I'd taken from the kitchen drawer. I'd been an engineer for 40 years. I knew how to open a filing cabinet. It took me less than 2 minutes. The lock clicked and the drawer slid open. Inside were folders, dozens of them, all meticulously organized. I pulled out the first one and opened it. Power of attorney documents. Already filled out. My name, my address, my social security number. All that was missing was my real signature. I took a photo with my phone, my hands shaking slightly. The next folder held cognitive assessment forms, blank ones, and one that had been filled out with a signature at the bottom that looked like it might belong to Dr. Peterson, but I couldn't be sure if it was real or forged. Another folder, real estate listing agreement, my house, my address, my forged signature at the bottom. Another, bank transfer authorization forms, redirecting my pension deposits into an account under Diana's name. I photographed everything. Then I found the nursing home contract. Sunrise Senior Living, $6,500 per month. The contract was signed by Rachel Sullivan, listed as my legal representative. My blood ran cold. They'd already picked out the facility, already signed the paperwork. All they needed was the POA to make it official. I kept digging. At the bottom of the drawer was a stack of printed emails, correspondence between Diana and Aaron. I skimmed through them, my stomach twisting. Subject: exit strategy from Diana to Aaron. Once the house sells, we'll have enough to disappear for a while. Mexico somewhere without extradition, just in case. I photographed every page. Then suddenly I heard something, a voice. Faint, coming from outside. I froze. The recording device. The one I'd hidden in the garage weeks ago. It was picking up audio. I pulled out my phone, opened the app, and listened. Diana's voice came through clear and sharp. She was standing just outside the garage on the back patio talking on the phone. I turned off my flashlight and crouched behind the filing cabinet listening. "I need my share now, Diana," Aaron's voice said through the speaker. "I've been patient long enough." "I told you," Diana said, her voice tight. "We have to wait until the POA is finalized. If we move too fast," Aaron interrupted. "It's been 3 months I've got bills to pay Diana, and I'm starting to think you're playing me." "How dare you? How dare I?" Aaron's voice was sharp now, angry. "You promised me half. But how do I know you won't cut me out once you've got the money?" Diana's laugh was cold. "Because you know too much. If I cut you out, you could go to the police." "Exactly," Aaron said. "So pay up now or I walk. And I take everything I know with me." There was a long silence. Then Diana spoke again, her voice icy. "You won't do that, Aaron. Because if I go down, you go down with me. Conspiracy to commit fraud. Attempted assault. That's right, I'll tell them about the staircase. You think they'll believe you didn't know?" I stopped breathing. Aaron's voice came back seething. "You're cold." "Careful," Diana said. "I'm the only reason you're getting anything at all." The line went dead. I heard Diana sigh, then her footsteps as she walked back into the house. I stayed crouched in the darkness, my heart pounding, my phone still recording. She'd just admitted everything. On tape. The fraud. The assault. And she'd implicated Aaron. I waited another 5 minutes to make sure she was gone. Then I stood up, my legs stiff, my knee screaming in protest. I closed the filing cabinet, locked it again, and slipped out of the garage, locking the door behind me. Back in my room, I sat on the edge of the bed, my phone in my hands, and reviewed everything I'd captured. The forged documents, the nursing home contract, the emails, and the recording of Diana and Aaron turning on each other. I had it all. Every lie, every betrayal, every calculated step they'd taken to steal my life. But I couldn't act yet. Not until I had one more thing: legal protection. Tomorrow I would make sure they could never touch my house again. I would call Sarah Thornton, the lawyer Frank had recommended, the one who specialized in elder rights, and I would set up a living trust. One that would lock Diana and Rachel out permanently. They thought they were so close. They thought the end game was in sight. But they were wrong, because I wasn't just defending myself anymore. I was going on the offensive. The next morning, I called the only person who could help me. And when I finished explaining everything, she said 4 words that changed it all: "We can fix this." The morning after I broke into the garage, the morning that would later become yesterday in my story, I made the most important call of my life. I told Diana I had a doctor's appointment, follow-up for my knee. She barely looked up from her coffee. "Do you need a ride?" She asked, her tone polite but disinterested. "No," I said. "Frank's taking me." She nodded and went back to scrolling through her phone. I walked out the door at 8:30, and Frank picked me up at the corner. "You sure about this?" he asked as we drove toward downtown Fairview Heights. "I'm sure," I said. Sarah Thornton's office was on the 3rd floor of a modest building near the courthouse. The door had a small brass plaque: Sarah Thornton, attorney at law, elder rights specialist. I pushed the door open. The office was neat and professional. Certificates and awards lined the walls. Photos of smiling elderly clients shaking Sarah's hand. A bookshelf filled with legal texts. Sarah stood up from her desk when I walked in. She was in her early 50s with sharp eyes and a firm handshake. "Mr. Sullivan," she said, "please have a seat. You sounded urgent on the phone." I sat down across from her, my hands resting on my knees. My wife and her daughter are trying to steal my house," I said. "And I have proof." Sarah picked up a pen and opened a notepad. "Start from the beginning." So I did. I told her about Diana, how we met 3 years ago, how she changed after we got married, how Rachel moved in with her kids and slowly became part of Diana's plan. I told her about the forged signatures, the fake credit card, the hidden mail, the locked garage. I told her about the medication overdose, about being pushed down the stairs, about Aaron Grant, Diana's secret lover. I told her about the recordings, the documents in the garage, the nursing home contract Rachel had already signed. Sarah didn't interrupt. She just listened, her pen moving steadily across the page. When I finished, I pulled out my phone. "I have audio," I said. "Do you want to hear it?" She nodded. I played the recordings. Diana and Rachel in the kitchen talking about the POA and locking me away. Diana and Aaron arguing about the money, admitting to the assault, the fraud, the conspiracy. Sarah listened to every word, her expression growing more serious with each passing minute. When the recordings ended, she set down her pen and leaned back in her chair. "Mr. Sullivan," she said slowly, "this is elder financial abuse, attempted assault, fraud, and criminal conspiracy. You have an incredibly strong case." I felt something loosen in my chest. Relief. Validation. "Can you help me?" I asked. "Absolutely," she said. "But first we need to protect your assets immediately. I'm going to recommend setting up a living trust." "What's that?" I asked. "It's a legal entity," she explained. "You transfer ownership of your house and accounts into the trust. You remain the trustee and the sole beneficiary. That means you still control everything. But legally, Diana and Rachel can't touch it. Even if they somehow got a power of attorney, it wouldn't apply to trust assets." "How long does that take?" I asked. "If we move fast, I can file the paperwork by the end of today. It'll be legally effective by 5 o'clock this evening." "Do it," I said. She nodded. "Second, we need to report this to the police. With your recordings and documentation, there's more than enough for an investigation." I hesitated. "I don't want them arrested yet." Sarah looked at me, her eyes sharp. "You want them to show their hand completely." I nodded slowly. "I want them to know what it feels like, to think they've won, and then watch it all fall apart." A small smile crossed Sarah's face. "You're stronger than they think, Mr. Sullivan." We spent the rest of the day working, signing trust documents, transferring ownership of the house from my name to the Norman Sullivan Living Trust, preparing a police report complete with copies of every recording, every photo, every piece of evidence. By 4 o'clock, we were done. Sarah handed me a small USB drive. "This contains copies of everything: recordings, photos, documents. Keep it somewhere safe. And this," she passed me a certificate, "is your Living Trust certification. As of 5 p.m. today, Diana Foster and Rachel Sullivan have zero legal authority over your assets." I held the paper in my hands, my fingers trembling slightly. This was it, the protection I needed. "There's one more thing," Sarah said. "I've been in contact with Detective Maria Brooks from the Financial Crimes Unit. She's ready. When you're ready to press charges, just give me the word. I'll call her, and they'll have arrest warrants within a few hours." I nodded. "I'll let you know, soon." Sarah walked me to the door. "Be careful, Mr. Sullivan. If they suspect you know something, they might act unpredictably." "I will," I said. As I left the office, the USB drive in my pocket and the trust certificate folded in my jacket, I felt something I hadn't felt in months: hope. Diana and Rachel had no idea. They thought they held all the cards. They thought I was weak, confused, easy to manipulate. But tomorrow, when they told me to pack my bags and leave, I would smile. Because while they were plotting, I'd built a fortress they couldn't penetrate. And the war was about to begin. The next morning they came for me. Diana, Rachel, both standing in my bedroom doorway like executioners. And that's when Diana said the words I'd been waiting to hear: "Get out, Norman. 1 hour. That's all you have." The morning after I met with Sarah, the morning everything came to a head. I woke up early and sat on the edge of my bed with a cup of coffee waiting. I knew they were coming. I'd heard them whispering in the hallway the night before, finalizing their plan, rehearsing their lines. So when the footsteps approached my door, I wasn't surprised. Diana entered first, Rachel behind her. Both of them wearing expressions that were meant to be stern but came across as nervous. Diana's words came down like a slap. "Get out, Norman. 1 hour. That's all you have." Rachel stood behind her silent, unable to meet my eyes. I looked up at them, set my coffee cup down on the nightstand, and said nothing. Diana continued, her voice sharp and controlled. "We've arranged everything. A room at Sunrise Senior Living. It's a very nice facility. You'll be comfortable there." I looked at her. "I see." Rachel spoke next, her voice shaking slightly. "Dad, this is for your own good. You've been forgetting things. We're worried about you." I turned to Rachel, not angry, just sad. "Have I been forgetting things?" Diana cut in before Rachel could answer. "We don't have time for this. Pack your essentials, clothes, medications, personal items. Everything else stays here." "Everything else?" I asked quietly. "You mean my belongings, my photos, my life?" Diana's expression didn't soften. "This house is too much for you, Norman. We're selling it. The money will be used for your care." I stood up slowly, my knee still aching, but my posture straight. "And who decided that?" Diana pulled a folder from under her arm and held it out. "You did. See your signature. Power of attorney. You signed it last month. Don't you remember?" I looked at the paper. The signature was forged, but it was good. Close enough to fool most people. Rachel added quickly. "Dr. Peterson signed off on your cognitive assessment too. He agrees you need supervised care." I didn't argue. I just walked past them out of the bedroom and down the stairs to the living room. They followed. Diana continued, her confidence growing. "The buyer is offering $485,000, cash. We'll close in 30 days. By then you'll be settled at Sunrise." Rachel tried to sound encouraging. "And Dylan and Ashley can visit you every weekend." "It'll be nice, Dad." I turned and looked directly at Diana. "You've calculated everything." She smiled slightly. "Yes, I have. And if I refuse?" I asked. Her smile faded, replaced by something colder. "You don't have a choice, Norman. The POA gives Rachel legal authority to make decisions on your behalf. And Dr. Peterson's assessment confirms you lack the capacity to make those decisions yourself. So no, you don't get to refuse." Rachel spoke softly. "Dad, please don't make this harder than it has to be." I looked at Rachel. "Harder for who, Rachel? For me or for your conscience?" She looked away. I turned back to Diana. 1 hour. You really think that's all you need?" Diana raised an eyebrow. "What's that supposed to mean?" I smiled. A small, cold smile. "Nothing, just interesting how confident you are." Diana's jaw tightened. "I'm confident because I've planned perfectly. You have no money, no lawyer, and no one believes you over me, Norman. So yes, 1 hour is all I need." I nodded slowly. "You're right. I don't have those things." Diana looked satisfied. "Good. Then pack your bags." I held her gaze for a long moment. Then I asked the question I'd been holding on to for months. "Did you ever love me, Diana?" She blinked, caught off guard. "What? Did you ever love me?" I repeated. "Or was I just a mark from the beginning?" For a second, something flickered in her eyes. Then it was gone, replaced by cold indifference. "Does it matter?" she asked. I felt something settle in my chest. A heaviness, but also clarity. "I suppose not," I said quietly. Diana turned toward the stairs. 1 hour, Norman. I'll be back to make sure you're gone." She walked away. Rachel hesitated, looking at me one last time, then followed. I stood there in the living room alone, listening to their footsteps fade up the stairs. Then I heard it. Diana's laugh, small, triumphant. the sound of someone who believed they'd already won. Rachel probably thought the same thing. But what they didn't know, what they couldn't possibly know, was that yesterday, while they were celebrating their victory, I'd made sure they would never see what was coming. The living trust had been filed. My house, my accounts, my pension all transferred into a legal entity they couldn't touch. Even with their forged POA, they had no claim. The evidence had been compiled. Every recording, every photo, every forged document, all cataloged, backed up, and ready to be delivered. And Detective Maria Brooks was just one phone call away. They thought I had 1 hour, but the truth, their time had run out long ago. I walked back upstairs to my bedroom, closed the door, and pulled out my phone. I opened the recording app. The device in the living room had captured everything. Diana's ultimatum, Rachel's complicity, the forged POA, the fake cognitive assessment, all on tape. I saved the file and backed it up to the cloud. Then I opened my messages and texted Sarah Thornton. "It's time." 3 dots appeared immediately. Then her response. "I'll call Detective Brooks. Stay safe." I set the phone down and sat on the edge of the bed. 1 hour. Diana thought that's all she needed to erase me from my own life. But she was wrong, because while she was busy savoring her victory, I was preparing to dismantle everything she'd built, piece by piece, word by word, lie by lie. They wanted me out of this house, but I wasn't going anywhere, not until I'd watched them lose everything. 2 days later, Diana announced we'd be hosting Thanksgiving dinner. "One last family gathering," she said. She had no idea how right she was. 2 days after she demanded I leave, Diana made an announcement that would seal her fate. "Oh, this year I'm hosting Thanksgiving," she said one morning over coffee. "I've invited your cousins Susan and Michael and a few neighbors. It'll be wonderful." I looked up from my newspaper, feigning surprise. "I thought I was supposed to be leaving." She laughed, a light, careless sound. "You are. But not until after Thanksgiving. It's the least I can do, give you one last holiday with family." I understood immediately. She wanted to play the role of the devoted wife in front of relatives, to make sure everyone saw her as caring, selfless, the woman who'd taken such good care of poor, declining Norman. "How thoughtful," and I said. She smiled. "I try." Over the next 2 days, Diana and Rachel prepared. Grocery shopping, decorating, cleaning. The house buzzed with activity, and while they prepared their show, I prepared mine. The Bluetooth speaker in the living room, the one Diana had bought to play background music, became the first piece of my plan. I paired it with my phone, tested the connection. It worked perfectly. The television. I connected Rachel's old laptop to it via HDMI cable. The laptop she'd left behind, the one with all her emails still saved. I loaded the video files I'd compiled. Recordings, photos, documents, all ready to display on the big screen. Then I made a call. "Sarah, it's Norman Sullivan." "Well, Mr. Sullivan, how are you holding up?" "I'm fine," I said. "But I need you to do something for me. Thanksgiving Day, 3 o'clock. Call Detective Brooks. I need her and her team here by 3:30. There was a pause on the other end. "You're sure about this in front of your family?" "I'm sure," I said. "They wanted a show. I'll give them one." "Understood," Sarah said. "We'll be ready." I hung up and sat back in my chair. My hands steady, my mind clear. The night before Thanksgiving, I couldn't sleep. I sat in my bedroom staring at the photo on my nightstand. Margaret, my wife, smiling at the camera, her eyes full of warmth. I picked up the frame and held it carefully. "I'm sorry, Maggie," I whispered. "I couldn't save our home from this. But I can save those children, Dylan and Ashley. They didn't deserve to grow up watching their mother destroy herself, watching Diana poison everything she touched." I set the photo down gently and closed my eyes. Tomorrow. It all ended tomorrow. Thanksgiving morning arrived with the smell of roasting turkey and the sound of Diana barking orders in the kitchen. The guests began arriving around noon. Cousin Susan was first. She was 55, kind-hearted, always quick with a hug. She embraced Diana warmly, then turned to me. "Norman, you look wonderful," she said, squeezing my hand. "How are you feeling?" "I'm better than expected," I said truthfully. Cousin Michael arrived next. 60 years old, stern-faced, a retired high school principal. He shook my hand firmly. "Good to see you, Norman." Then came the neighbors. Mrs. Patterson, who lived 2 houses down. Mr. Green, who'd helped me fix my fence last spring. By 1 o'clock, the house was full. 8 people, not counting Norman, Diana, Rachel, and the kids. Dylan and Ashley were dressed in their best clothes, running around excitedly. Ashley ran up to me and threw her arms around my waist. "I'm so glad you're still here, Grandpa," she said. I knelt down, ignoring the pain in my knee, and held her hand. "Me too, sweetheart." Diana moved through the room like a hostess in a magazine spread, smiling, laughing, pouring wine, playing her part perfectly. Rachel served drinks, but I noticed her hands shaking slightly as she carried the tray. Cousin Susan noticed too. "Rachel, dear, are you okay?" Susan asked gently. "You look stressed." Rachel forced a smile. "Just a lot of cooking, I'm fine." But she wasn't fine. I could see it in her eyes. The guilt, the fear. She knew something was coming. She just didn't know what. I stayed quiet, observing. My phone was in my pocket, the recording app open and ready. At 2:45, Diana called everyone to the table. The dining room was beautifully set. Candles, fine china, a perfectly roasted turkey at the center. It looked like something out of a Norman Rockwell painting. Diana stood at the head of the table and raised her glass. "I want to make a toast," she said, her voice warm and confident. "To family, to love, and to new beginnings." Everyone raised their glasses. I raised mine too, but I didn't drink. Diana's eyes found mine across the table. "Norman, would you like to say something?" The room went quiet, all eyes on me. I stood slowly, setting my glass down. "Yes," I said. "I want to thank everyone for being here today, because you're about to witness something unforgettable." Diana's smile faltered. "Norman, what are you—" I pulled my phone from my pocket and pressed a button. The Bluetooth speaker on the shelf behind me made a soft beep, and then Diana's voice filled the room. "He's too trusting, always has been. That's why this has been so easy." The room went silent. Every face turned toward the speaker, then toward Diana. Her face went pale. Rachel froze her glass halfway to her lips. I looked around the table, meeting each person's eyes. "And now," I said quietly, "let me tell you a story. Before we get to the moment Norman has been waiting for, the moment of truth at that Thanksgiving table, I want to hear from you. Type the number 1 if you think Norman's plan will work perfectly, or type 2 if you think something will go wrong. Drop your number in the comments right now so I know you're here with me. Quick reminder, this story includes some fictional elements crafted for entertainment and educational value. Not everything you hear may be entirely factual. If this isn't for you, you're welcome to exit the video at this point. The first recording played, then the second, then the third. And with each word that echoed through the room, I watched the faces of my wife and stepdaughter collapse. The Bluetooth speaker sat on the mantel, innocuous and small, but the voice that poured from it filled every corner of the dining room. Diana's voice. Clear, cold, unmistakable. "Aaron, I told you it's almost done. Yes, the house will sell for at least $485,000. We split it 50-50, remember?" Cousin Susan's fork clattered against her plate. Michael froze mid-chew, his eyes darting from the speaker to Diana, then back to me. Mrs. Patterson's hand flew to her chest. "Mr." Green set down his wine glass with a thud. Diana's face drained of color. She stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the hardwood. "Norman, what is this? Turn it off. Now." I didn't move. I didn't speak. I simply watched. Aaron's voice crackled through the speaker, next smooth and demanding. "You've been saying that for 2 months, Diana. I'm running out of patience. He's weak now. Diana's recorded voice continued. After the fall, he can barely walk. Once the POA is signed, it's over. What about the daughter? Aaron asked. Can you trust her? Diana's laugh was brittle, dismissive. Rachel, she's desperate for money. She'll do whatever I say. Besides, she doesn't know about you. Rachel's chair scraped back. She stood trembling, her eyes wide and wet. Mom, what is this? Shut up, Rachel. Diana's voice was sharp, vicious. She turned to me, her expression a twisted mask of fury and panic. You recorded me in my own home. I finally spoke, my voice steady and calm. My home, Diana. And yes, I did. That's illegal, she hissed. You can't use that against me. I smiled. Just a little. Illinois is a one-party consent state. I can record any conversation I'm part of or any conversation that takes place in my home. I checked with my lawyer. It's all admissible. Susan stood now, her face flushed with anger. Diana, who the hell is Aaron? Diana's mouth opened, then closed. No words came out. Michael's voice was low, dangerous. You were planning to sell Norman's house while he was still living in it. This is a misunderstanding, Diana said quickly, her hands raised in a placating gesture. Aaron is just a business associate. Norman is confused. He's been having memory issues. The second recording began. This time it was Diana and Rachel, in the kitchen, late at night, just 5 days ago. Mom, are you sure Dad will sign the POA? Rachel's voice was anxious, uncertain. He doesn't have to sign it, sweetheart. We already have his signature. Remember all those practice sheets? I got it perfect. Rachel's breath hitched. What if he finds out? He won't. And even if he does, by then the house will be sold. The money will be in our accounts. We'll be in Mexico before he can do anything about it. Rachel's sob was audible through the speaker. She turned to me, her face crumpling. Dad, I didn't mean... I said quietly. Don't lie to me anymore, Rachel. You forged his signature. Susan's voice was shrill, now disbelieving. Diana, that's fraud. That's elder abuse. Mrs. Patterson stood, her hand still pressed to her chest. I need to leave. I can't be part of this. Wait, Diana said desperately. This isn't what it sounds like. Norman has been sick. We were trying to protect him. The POA was for his own good. How his own good? Michael's voice was a roar now. You were planning to steal his house and run off to Mexico. Dylan started crying. Ashley clung to Rachel's leg, her small face streaked with tears. Mommy, why is everyone yelling? Rachel sank to her knees, her body shaking with sobs. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't want to do it. She made me. I made you. Diana whirled on her daughter, her eyes blazing. You came to me, Rachel. You begged me for money. You said you'd do anything. I didn't know you were going to... Rachel's voice broke. I didn't know about Aaron. You told me we were just protecting Dad. Protecting him. Diana's laugh was bitter, unhinged. You knew exactly what we were doing. Don't play innocent now. The third recording began. This one was shorter, more brutal. Aaron's voice again. What if the old man survives? What if the fall doesn't work? Diana's response was immediate, chilling. Then we try again. Third time's the charm, right? Aaron's laugh was low, approving. You're cold, Diana. I like that. The room went silent. The only sound was Rachel's sobbing and Ashley's soft whimpers. Susan's voice was quiet, now stunned. You tried to kill him? No, Diana said quickly. That's taken out of context. We were talking about something else. What else could that possibly mean? Michael demanded. You pushed him down the stairs, didn't you? That wasn't an accident. Diana's hands clenched into fists. Her face was red now, her breath coming in short, sharp gasps. You have no proof. That recording doesn't prove anything. I stood, slowly, carefully. Every eye in the room turned to me. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the USB drive. I held it up so everyone could see. Actually, I said, I have proof, video proof, from the hallway camera, of you pushing me, of you and Rachel going through my mail, of you practicing my signature. All of it. Diana's face went white. Rachel's sobs grew louder. I didn't know about the camera. I swear I didn't know. I walked to the television, plugged in the USB drive. The screen flickered to life. You wanted one last family gathering, I said quietly. You wanted everyone to see what a devoted wife you are. So let's show them. Let's show them everything. My finger hovered over the play button. Diana lunged forward. Don't you dare! But it was too late. The video began to play. The video began to play. And for the first time since this nightmare started, I saw real fear in Diana's eyes. The screen flickered, then sharpened into clarity. The timestamp appeared in the corner 2 weeks ago, 8:45 in the morning. The hallway upstairs. The camera angle looked down from the ceiling, capturing the landing at the top of the staircase. I appeared on screen, standing at the top of the stairs, about to descend. My hand rested on the banister. My posture was careful, deliberate, the way a man with an injured knee moves when he's trying not to aggravate old pain. Then Diana entered the frame. She walked up behind me. Slowly. Her head turned left, then right, checking to see if anyone was watching. The motion was deliberate, calculated, and then she pushed. Her hands shot out, palms flat against my shoulder blades. The force was unmistakable. On the screen, my body lurched forward. My hand slipped from the banister. I tumbled down 5 steps, my knee slamming into the railing with a sickening crack that echoed through the TV speakers. My cry of pain filled the room. The living room went silent. No one moved. No one breathed. On screen, Diana stood at the top of the stairs, staring down at me. For just a second, her face was blank. Cold. Then she turned and called out, her voice shrill and panicked. Rachel! Oh my God, call 911. Michael stood abruptly, his chair screeching against the floor. He pointed at the screen, his voice shaking. She pushed him. I just watched her push him. Diana's face had gone white. Her mouth opened, then closed. She shook her head rapidly. That's not real. It's been edited. Someone doctored that footage. The timestamp is there, I said quietly. The raw file is intact. The metadata hasn't been touched. This is what happened, Diana. Susan was crying now, her hand over her mouth. You tried to hurt him. You tried to make him fall. Mrs. Patterson stood, her purse clutched to her chest. I'm calling the police. They're already on their way, I said. Diana whirled toward me, her eyes wild. You planned this. You set me up. The front door opened. Detective Sarah Brooks stepped inside, followed by Officer Martinez. Brooks held up her badge, her expression calm and professional. Diana Foster, Rachel Sullivan. I'm Detective Brooks with the Financial Crimes Unit. You're both under arrest. Diana's scream was shrill, frantic. No, this is a setup. He orchestrated all of this. Brooks didn't flinch. We've reviewed the evidence, the recordings, the video footage, the forged documents. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Officer Martinez moved toward Diana, handcuffs in hand. Diana jerked backward, her hands raised. Don't touch me, I didn't do anything. But Martinez was calm, practiced. He took her wrist, turned her gently but firmly, and snapped the cuffs into place. Diana writhed, her voice growing louder. Let me go, this is insane. Rachel didn't fight. She simply sat in her chair, her face buried in her hands, her shoulders shaking with sobs. Martinez moved to her next, and she stood without resistance, her wrists extended. The cuffs clicked shut, and she flinched at the sound. Dylan and Ashley clung to each other, both crying. Susan rushed over and pulled them into her arms. "It's okay, sweethearts. Everything's going to be okay." Diana twisted toward me, her face red and contorted with rage. "You're going to regret this, you bastard. I'll make sure you—" "What, Brooks said sharply. "I'd advise you to stop talking." Rachel lifted her head, her eyes red and swollen. She looked at me, her voice barely a whisper. "Dad, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." I met her gaze. My chest ached, but I kept my voice steady. "I know, Rachel, but sorry doesn't undo what you did." Martinez and Brooks began to lead them toward the door. Diana was still shouting, her voice raw and desperate. Rachel walked in silence, her head bowed, tears streaming down her face. The door closed behind them. The room fell into a heavy, stunned silence. Then another figure stepped through the doorway. Sarah Thornton. She looked around the room, her expression composed and kind. "Mr. Sullivan, may I?" I nodded. She turned to the gathered guests, setting her briefcase on the side table and pulling out a file. "I'm Sarah Thornton, Mr. Sullivan's attorney. I have an announcement." Michael leaned forward. "What kind of announcement?" Sarah opened the file. "As of 3 days ago, all assets and real property belonging to Norman Sullivan were transferred into an irrevocable living trust. Mr. Sullivan is the sole trustee and beneficiary." Susan frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means," Sarah said clearly, "that Diana Foster and Rachel Sullivan have no legal authority over this house, Mr. Sullivan's bank accounts, or any of his assets. The power of attorney they attempted to forge is void and unenforceable." Susan exhaled, relief flooding her face. "Thank God," Sarah continued. "Furthermore, under the terms of the trust and pursuant to legal proceedings, Diana and Rachel are required to vacate this property within 72 hours. Their belongings will be removed under police supervision." Michael stood and walked over to me. He extended his hand, and I shook it. "Norman, you're one hell of a fighter. I'm proud to call you family." Susan hugged me, her voice thick with emotion. "We're here for you. Whatever you need." Ashley broke away from Susan and ran to me, wrapping her small arms around my waist. "I don't want you to go anywhere, Grandpa." I knelt down, ignoring the ache in my knee, and pulled her close. My throat tightened. "I'm not going anywhere, sweetheart. I'm staying right here. With you and Dylan." Dylan joined us, his small hands gripping my shirt. I held them both, and for the first time in months, I felt something I'd almost forgotten: hope. As the sun set on Thanksgiving Day, I stood in my living room, my home surrounded by the people who truly loved me. Diana and Rachel were gone. Aaron had disappeared, and for the first time in months I could breathe. But the story wasn't over. There was still a trial ahead. Still consequences to face. Still wounds that needed healing. And I had 2 grandchildren who needed me now more than ever. The fight wasn't finished, but I had won the first battle. And I wasn't done fighting yet. 6 weeks later, I sat in a courtroom and watched my stepdaughter plead guilty. It was the hardest thing I'd ever had to witness. The courtroom was packed. Cousins Susan and Michael sat behind me. Mrs. Patterson and Mr. Green had come to show their support. Local reporters filled the back rows. This case had made headlines across the county. Elderly man nearly loses everything to wife and stepdaughter. Judge Harold Stevens presided, his face stern and weathered. He looked down from the bench and began reading the charges. "Diana Foster, you are charged with financial elder abuse, fraud, assault, with intent to cause serious injury, criminal conspiracy, and forgery." "How do you plead?" Diana's lawyer stood. "Not guilty, Your Honor." Diana sat rigid in her chair, her face cold and impassive. She showed no remorse, no fear, only defiance. Judge Stevens turned to Rachel. "Rachel Sullivan, you are charged with conspiracy to commit fraud, aiding and abetting and forgery. How do you plead? Rachel stood, her voice barely a whisper. Guilty, Your Honor. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Linda Hayes, presented the evidence. The recordings played through the courtroom speakers. Diana's voice cold and calculating. Rachel's voice anxious but complicit. Aaron's voice greedy and cruel. The video came next. On the courtroom monitor, everyone watched Diana push me down the stairs. Gasps echoed through the room. One juror covered her mouth. Diana's lawyer objected. Your Honor, the authenticity of this footage is in question. The metadata has been verified. Prosecutor Hayes interrupted. The timestamp is accurate. This is unaltered footage from Mr. Sullivan's home security system. Judge Stevens nodded. Objection overruled. The video stands. I was called to the witness stand. My hands trembled as I placed them on the Bible and swore to tell the truth. Prosecutor Hayes approached me gently. Mr. Sullivan, can you describe your relationship with the defendants? I took a breath. I married Diana 3 years ago. Rachel is her daughter from a previous marriage. After Rachel's divorce, she and her children moved in with us. I treated Rachel like my own. I helped her financially. I cared for her children. I trusted her. And how did that trust end? My voice cracked. They tried to steal my home. They forged my signature on legal documents. Diana pushed me down the stairs and caused a serious knee injury. They gave me an overdose of my blood pressure medication. They planned to have me declared mentally incompetent so they could take control of everything I owned. Rachel sobbed at the defense table. Diana stared straight ahead, expressionless. What was the hardest part of all this, Mr. Sullivan? I looked at Rachel. Her face was red and swollen from crying. The hardest part was realizing that the young woman I had treated as my own daughter never saw me as family. She saw me as a target. Rachel's sobs grew louder. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. Diana leaned toward her lawyer and whispered something sharp. He nodded and stood. Your Honor, my client maintains that Mr. Sullivan is exaggerating. She never intended to harm him. She was simply trying to help manage his affairs as his health declined. Prosecutor Hayes played the recording from the garage. Diana's voice clear and damning. If the old man survives, we try again. Third time's the charm, right? The courtroom fell silent. Judge Stevens leaned forward. I've reviewed the evidence. This is one of the most calculated cases of financial elder abuse I've seen in my career. He looked at Diana. Mrs. Foster, you manipulated your husband. You attempted to cause him serious injury. You conspired with your daughter and a third party to defraud him of his life savings and his home. And you show no remorse. He turned to Rachel. Ms. Sullivan, you participated willingly. You forged documents. You helped your mother deceive a man who treated you with kindness. However, you have cooperated with this investigation and entered a guilty plea. Judge Stevens delivered the sentences. I maintain sentence. Diana Foster, you are hereby sentenced to 8 to 12 years in state prison. You will pay a fine of $50,000 and restitution of $18,000 to Mr. Sullivan. Diana's face twisted with rage. This is ridiculous, she shouted. The bailiff moved toward her. Judge Stevens continued unmoved. Rachel Sullivan, you are sentenced to 4 to 7 years in state prison. Your parental rights are temporarily suspended. Supervised visitation with your children may be granted after 2 years, contingent upon good behavior and successful completion of a rehabilitation program. Rachel didn't react. She simply bowed her head and wept. Angela Davis, the social worker assigned to the case, stood. Your Honor, regarding custody of Dylan and Ashley Sullivan, Judge Stevens nodded. I've reviewed Mr. Sullivan's background. He is a fit and capable guardian. Full custody is granted to Norman Sullivan. Supervised visitation for Miss Sullivan may be considered after 2 years. Relief flooded through me. Dylan and Ashley were safe. Prosecutor Hayes addressed the court. Your Honor, we have not yet located Aaron Grant. A warrant has been issued, but it appears he has left the state, possibly the country. Judge Stevens frowned. If Mr. Grant is apprehended, he will face charges of conspiracy and fraud. This case remains open. Aaron had escaped, but Diana and Rachel had not. That was enough. After the trial, I drove home with Dylan and Ashley. They were quiet, processing everything. Ashley spoke first, her voice small. "Grandpa, will we ever see Mom again?" I pulled her close. "Yes, sweetheart. When she's ready. When she's better." Dylan's voice was hard, angry. "I don't want to see her. She tried to hurt you." I looked at him. "Your mom made terrible choices, Dylan, but she's still your mom. One day you might be able to forgive her. But you don't have to do that today." A week later, my phone rang. An automated voice. "You have a call from Fairview County Jail. Press 1 to accept." I pressed 1. "Dad." Rachel's voice was broken, trembling. "It's me." I said nothing. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I needed to hear your voice, to tell you I'm sorry, for everything. I was weak. I was desperate. And I let Diana manipulate me." I exhaled. "Rachel, I know I can't undo what I did, but I want you to know I'm going to change. I'm going to become the woman my mother would have been proud of, even if it takes years." My voice shook. "I hope you do, Rachel. I really do. Because Dylan and Ashley need their mother. A real mother. Not the person you became," Rachel cried. Can you tell them I love them?" "I will, but you'll have to prove it, Rachel. Words aren't enough anymore." "I know, I love you, Dad." I paused. "I love you too, but I can't trust you. Not now. Maybe not ever." I hung up. I sat in my chair holding the phone, tears running down my face. Not tears of pain, tears of acceptance. Rachel was lost. Maybe forever. But I still had Dylan and Ashley, and that was what mattered most. The trial was over. Justice had been served. But healing. That would take time. Time that I finally had free to spend with my grandchildren in my own home on my own terms. Diana was gone. Rachel was paying for what she did, and I was still standing. Spring came quietly that year, and with it came the chance to begin again. 4 months after the trial, I made a decision. I couldn't stay in the house at 2847 Maple Drive anymore. Too many ghosts, too many memories of betrayal. So I sold it. The new owners were a young couple with a baby on the way. They were excited, hopeful. The house deserved that kind of energy again. Frank Davis had offered me his cabin months before. "It's peaceful out there, Norman," he'd said. "Trees, fresh air, a little stream running through the backyard. Perfect for healing." I accepted. Dylan and Ashley were nervous at first. New school, new friends, leaving behind everything familiar. But kids are resilient. Within weeks, they were running through the forest, catching frogs in the stream, laughing the way children should laugh. The cabin was small. 2 bedrooms, a kitchen with a wood stove, a living room with a stone fireplace. But it was ours. And it was safe. Every morning I woke early, made coffee, and sat on the porch watching the sun rise over the trees. Frank would join me sometimes, and we'd talk about nothing in particular. Just 2 old men grateful to still be here. Life became simple. I taught Dylan woodworking, showing him how to measure, cut, and sand. He had steady hands and a sharp mind. Ashley preferred drawing. She'd sit by the stream for hours, sketching birds and trees and clouds. Every night we gathered around the fireplace. Ashley would ask about Margaret. "What was Grandma like?" she asked one evening. I smiled. She was kind, strong. She loved people fiercely even when they made mistakes. Dylan looked up. "Do you think Mom will change?" I paused. "I don't know, Dylan. I hope so. But even if she doesn't, you will. You'll grow up to be good people. I'll make sure of that. One afternoon, I sat alone by the stream. I thought about everything that had happened. The lies, the betrayal, the recordings, the trial, and I thought about silence. For months they told me I was weak, too old, too trusting, too forgettable, and maybe I had been. I trusted Diana when I shouldn't have. I believed Rachel would never betray me, but they made a mistake. They mistook my silence for surrender. They thought that because I didn't shout, didn't fight back immediately, it meant I had given up. What they didn't understand was that silence isn't weakness. Silence is observation, patience, the quiet accumulation of strength before the storm. I watched, I listened, I recorded every lie, every threat, every betrayal. And when the time came, I didn't need to scream. I just needed to press play. That's the power of silence, not submission, strategy. I was 71 years old. I'd lost my wife. I'd been poisoned, pushed down the stairs, and nearly erased from my own life. But I was still here, still standing, still fighting, because I refused to let them win. And if there's one thing I want people to know, especially those who feel invisible, forgotten, or powerless, it's this. Your age doesn't define your strength. Your silence doesn't mean you've surrendered. And no matter how dark things get, you always have a choice. You can let them break you. Or you can break free. I chose freedom. And I'd make that choice again. Every single time. Grandpa Ashley ran toward me. Come watch the sunset. I followed her to a small hill behind the cabin. Dylan was already there. The sky was painted in shades of orange and gold, the sun sinking slowly beyond the trees. I sat between them, pulling them close. Tomorrow will be even better. Ashley tilted her head. How do you know? I smiled. Because we're together. And nothing, no one can take that away from us. They thought they could erase me. But I'm still here. Still breathing. Still loving my grandchildren. Still living in a home that's truly mine. Diana is in prison. Rachel is paying for her choices. And me, I'm free. So, if you find yourself backed into a corner, manipulated, or told you're too weak to fight back, remember this silence was when I was strongest. Not because I gave up, but because I was preparing, watching, waiting. And when the moment came, I didn't just survive. I won. The sun dipped below the horizon. Ashley leaned against my shoulder. Dylan rested his head on my arm, and for the first time in years, I felt peace. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of hope. Tomorrow, I whispered, is going to be a good day. And I believed it. Looking back, I want to tell you, don't be like me. Don't ignore the red flags. Don't wait until you're pushed downstairs to see the truth. I trusted too easily, and it nearly destroyed me. God gave me 3 warnings. When Diana controlled my mail, God was telling me to pay attention. When I found forged signatures, God was showing me the way out. When I survived that fall, God gave me one final chance. I'm grateful I finally listened. This husband revenge story isn't about anger, it's about justice. People ask about husband revenge, but real husband revenge is simply letting truth speak for itself. This drama family crisis taught me everything. Every drama family has secrets, but my drama family situation proved that documentation beats manipulation. Silence isn't weakness, it's strategy. Watch, listen, document, then act. My advice: protect yourself legally before disaster strikes. Set up a living trust. Keep your own records. Never sign anything without reading it first, even from loved ones. In my personal opinion, the hardest part wasn't the betrayal, it was accepting that people I considered family never saw me the same way. But that acceptance set me free. If this story touched you, please comment below, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to the channel. Hit that notification bell for more stories. Thank you for following this journey to the end. Please note, future stories may contain fictionalized elements for educational purposes. If this isn't for you, feel free to explore other content that suits you better. You're never too old to fight back.